You used to spray your fields for $4 an acre, mixed it yourself, applied it yourself, understood exactly what you were putting on the ground and why. You pay $120 an acre today. Same fields, same weeds. Same basic problem that farming has always faced. Something else wants to grow in the same ground your crop needs. 30 times the price for the same result your father achieved with a backpack sprayer and a product that costs less than a tank of gas. Yeah, and here's the part that makes the math truly impossible. The weeds that cost $4 to kill in 1970 cost $120 to manage in 2024. Not kill, manage. Because some of them cannot be killed anymore with anything currently available at any price. This is not a story about one company or one product. Well, it is a story about how three forces transformed chemical weed control from a simple, affordable tool into a complex, expensive dependency that has its own built-in escalation. Every year more expensive. Every year less effective against the weeds that matter most. If this land runs in your blood, subscribe to Classic Farm Iron. Oh, fellow farmers are watching right now. Three forces drove herbicide costs from $4 to $120 and created a weed problem worse than the one they were supposed to solve. Industry consolidation. The Roundup Ready system and what it built. Herbicide resistance. The biological consequence nobody fully planned for. Each force made weed control more expensive. Each force reduced the farmer's options. And each force handed more control to fewer companies over something you cannot farm without. Consolidation first. You used to buy herbicides in a competitive market, multiple companies, multiple products, multiple active ingredients competing for your dollar. When one company's price was unreasonable, another company's product did the same job for less. In 1970, there were dozens of independent agricultural chemical companies operating in the United States. Regional manufacturers, generic producers, small companies that understood specific regional weed pressures and made products for specific markets. The consolidation followed the same pattern as seed consolidation, fertilizer consolidation, equipment consolidation. Acquisitions through the 1980s, mergers through the 1990s. By 2020, four companies controlled more than 60% of global pesticide sales. Bayer, Syngenta, BASF. Corteva. Bayer acquired Monsanto in 2018 for $63 billion, the largest acquisition in German corporate history. The company that made Roundup merged with the company that made Roundup Ready seeds. The herbicide and the trait that made the herbicide work now belong to the same corporation. Well, you bought the seed that required the chemical from the same company that sold you both. The Roundup Ready system second. In 1996, Monsanto introduced Roundup Ready soybeans. Genetically modified to tolerate glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup. You could plant the seed, spray glyphosate over the top, it'd kill every weed in the field, and the crop kept growing. It worked. It worked extraordinarily well. Farmers adopted it faster than almost any technology in agricultural history. By 2007, 90% of American soybeans were Roundup Ready, corn followed, cotton followed, canola followed. The convenience was real. Glyphosate was cheap, it was effective, it reduced tillage, it simplified weed management to a degree that seemed almost too good. Farmers who had spent decades managing complex weed programs could now manage almost everything with one product applied at the right time. The problem was that one product applied at the right time on 100 million acres for 20 consecutive years created selection pressure that nature was always going to respond to. Herbicide resistance, third. In 1996, there were no documented cases of glyphosate-resistant weeds in American farm fields. Glyphosate had been used since 1974 without producing significant resistance. By 2024, there are more than 50 species of glyphosate-resistant weeds documented in the United States. Palmer amaranth, water hemp, giant ragweed, horseweed, each one selected by the same pressure that made Roundup Ready so effective. The weeds that survived glyphosate application reproduced. Their offspring survived better. Their offspring's offspring survived better still. 20 years of selection produced weeds that glyphosate cannot touch. Palmer amaranth can grow 3 inches a day. A single plant can produce 1 million seeds. Well, it is resistant to glyphosate in most of the Corn Belt. It is resistant to multiple herbicide modes of action in some fields. It can outcompete corn for light and nutrients and reduce yields by 90% in heavily infested fields. The solution to glyphosate-resistant weeds is more herbicides, different modes of action, more applications, more expense, and the same biological pressure that produced glyphosate-resistant weeds is already working on the herbicides being used to replace glyphosate. The financial math makes the transformation concrete. You used to manage weeds with cultivation and modest chemical application. $2 to $4 an acre. More a combination of mechanical and chemical control that kept weed pressure manageable without chemical dependency. The Roundup Ready transition initially reduced costs. Glyphosate at $2 to $3 a gallon in the late 1990s. Simple program, effective result. The economics worked. Then resistance arrived. And the program that replaced cultivation could no longer do the job alone. Additional herbicides layered on top of glyphosate, pre-emergent applications before planting, post-emergent applications after emergence, multiple active ingredients targeting multiple resistance mechanisms. The simple $2 program became a $30 program, became a $60 program, became a $120 program. Each step driven by the resistance that the previous step helped create. The companies that produce herbicide-resistant seed traits also produce the herbicides those traits are resistant to. When resistance to one herbicide creates demand for a new herbicide, the company that sells the seed also sells the new herbicide. The system escalates. The company profits from each escalation. The farmer pays for each escalation. The weeds drive the escalation that benefits everyone except the farmer. Some farmers found ways to reduce their chemical dependency. Integrated weed management, combining cultivation, cover crops, crop rotation, and reduced herbicide use to manage weed pressure without selecting hard for resistant populations. Slower, more complex, less convenient than spraying once and forgetting. Cover crops, a thick cereal rye cover terminated at planting, can suppress early season weeds more effectively than some herbicide programs. Your father knew this, not as a resistance management strategy, as common sense. Cultivation returning. Mash row cultivation equipment that seemed obsolete in the Roundup Ready era is selling again. Farmers who abandoned mechanical weed control 20 years ago are relearning it because the chemical program costs too much and works too poorly against resistant populations. Diverse crop rotation, breaking the corn-soybean cycle that dominates resistance management thinking. Different crops, different herbicide modes of action, different selection pressure, different weed outcomes. You used to walk your fields in July and see clean ground. $4 an acre bought you that. Simple chemistry, understood risk, weeds you could kill with products that cost less than lunch. Was it you spend $120 an acre today and walk the same fields in July and still find Palmer amaranth standing 6 feet tall in the rows? Not because you applied the wrong product, because the product that worked 20 years ago selected the exact plant that is standing in front of you now. And the product that might kill that plant costs more, works harder on the crop, and is already facing the early stages of resistance in the next generation of seeds that wheat is dropping right now. $4, $120, same fields. The weeds are different now. What? Did you farm through the Roundup Ready transition? Do you remember when glyphosate was the answer to everything? When the simplicity of it seemed almost too good? Do you remember the first field where Roundup stopped working? The first Palmer amaranth that came back after you sprayed it? The first time you realized the simple program was gone and wasn't coming back? Mama, are you spending more on herbicides today than you spent on everything 20 years ago? Is the weed pressure worse now than before the system that was supposed to solve it? Tell us below. Because the farmers who remember $4 weed control and clean fields in July understand something about $120 and Palmer amaranth standing 6 feet tall that no herbicide company marketing presentation will ever fully explain. Would I share this with a farmer who is spending more on herbicides every year and getting less weed control than they got for a fraction of the cost 20 years ago?